Tensions between Lebanon and Israel have reached an all-time high since October 7th attack. Both sides have been involved in a constant crossfire. But this week, the leader of the Hezbollah group, Hassan Nasrallah, sent out a clear message to Israel. Hezbollah will stop at nothing if the Israeli forces do not exercise restraint. On the other hand, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned Israel will turn Beirut into Gaza in the event of a war. The latest, the Israeli army has released footage which it says shows a target being hit in Lebanon. IDF has said the target was responsible for supplying weapons to Hamas and to the Lebanese Sunni Islamist group Jamaah Islamiyah. Here's a report.
Of course, everyone is afraid. Anyone who tells you they're not afraid is lying to themselves.
In the southern Lebanese city of Sidon, fears are growing that the Gaza war could expand and drag in Lebanon. Regular puffs of smoke on the border show where Hezbollah missiles are intercepted over northern Israel or Israeli airstrikes on southern Lebanon. Lebanese were bracing for war after stark threats on Wednesday from Sayed Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah. He said nowhere in Israel would be safe if there were a war, and even Cyprus could be in danger if it let Israel use its bases. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned Israel would turn Beirut into Gaza in the event of a war. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres had this warning on Friday.
The risk for the conflict in the Middle East to widen is real and must be avoided. One rash move, one miscalculation, could trigger a catastrophe that goes far beyond the border and, frankly, beyond imagination.
Hezbollah has been firing rockets at Israel in solidarity with its Palestinian ally Hamas since the Gaza war erupted in October. It says they won't stop until a ceasefire in Gaza. That's forced tens of thousands to flee homes in Israel, where political pressure is building for tougher action. Tens of thousands of Lebanese have also fled their homes because of the Israeli airstrikes.
The situation is serious.
US diplomacy this week showed deepening concern too. US President Joe Biden sent over his special envoy, Amos Hochstein.
Further escalation.
And US Secretary of State Antony Blinken told Israeli officials to avoid further escalation. Some diplomats and analysts say Nasrallah's threats aim to match escalating rhetoric from Israel and act as a deterrent. Hezbollah has been flexing its muscle, drawing on ever more potent weaponry, while signalling it doesn't want all-out war. Israel has the most powerful army in the Middle East, but Hezbollah has thousands of fighters, many with experience in the Syrian civil war, and an arsenal of tens of thousands of missiles capable of hitting cities all over Israel. It has a large fleet of drones and apparently flew one over the Israeli port city of Haifa this week, underlining the potential threat to key economic infrastructure, including power systems. Israeli officials assess that the end of the main phase of fighting in Gaza is weeks away. This week, the Army's Northern Command said it had approved operational plans for an offensive in Lebanon. For weeks, Israeli commanders have been holding training exercises and assessments in preparation. But war could overwhelm Israel's famed Iron Dome missile defense system, and Israel has had bruising experience in Lebanon in the past. After its forces invaded in 1982, they occupied a swathe of southern Lebanon for nearly 2 decades. And Israel and Hezbollah waged war for a month in 2006. Lebanon's infrastructure and economy is already crippled, a result of decades of poor government and conflicts, including with Israel.
And for more on this, we earlier spoke to Lieutenant Colonel Daniel L. Davis, who is a military expert and the host of Daniel Davis Deep Dive on YouTube. We asked him about the growing tensions between Israel and the Hezbollah militants and the imminent risk of a regional spillover. And this is what he had to say.
I think these warnings are valid and need to be taken deadly serious by both Israel, the United States, the regional powers in the area, because, listen, we got to understand, Hezbollah is not Hamas. And as much trouble as Israel has had to take care of the Hamas terrorist or threat and their militant capacity in the Qasem brigades there in the Gaza Strip, it would be dramatically more difficult if they went to war on the ground in Lebanon against Hezbollah. Hezbollah has more experienced troops. They have far more defensible positions than the Hamas side had. They've had decades, almost a couple of decades nearly, to prepare those since the 2006 war ended, and they have a far higher arsenal with which to attack. So they're really good at defending, as the Russians showed that they were, as they defended against the Ukrainian assault last year. The defense has the advantage in there, and Israel would have to go into the teeth of this stuff. And it's the same thing. You have tank mines, you have anti-tank missiles, you have the rockets, you have artillery. All those things they would have to be going through. At the same time, they still have the southern front with Hamas, because they would certainly cause a lot of trouble in the rear. And frankly, I don't think that Israel has enough ammunition, and it would strain their ability to conduct these operations simultaneously. And I think it would be a losing proposition that I don't think they should go into.
We also asked him about the on-ground situation and how Israel is battling multiple wars, from the one in the Red Sea to the war in Gaza and the war in Lebanon with the Hezbollah militants. And this is what Lieutenant Colonel Davis had to say.
It's just more than I think that they can take on. Listen, the Israeli Defense Force is indeed the premier military force in the entire region. Really, I think pretty clearly on that. But there are limits to their power, just like there's limits to American power. If you get too many irons in the fire, so to speak, and you have too much action coming from multiple directions, it's not hard to see that it could overwhelm them. And here's the thing. All Lebanon has to do, all they've got, the Hezbollah has to just not lose. They can make this thing last a long time and drain it out and try to bleed Israel. Israel, though, would have to win. If Israel starts a fight and they don't win, they'll come off really in the region and in the eyes of most of the world as having failed if they don't win. So the standard is much, much higher for the Israel to go than it is for the Hezbollah side.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.